And welcome back to the Delaware Boys Dynasty Football Podcast. It's been a while, ladies and gentlemen, but we are happy to be back. Ryan, so what's up to the people, baby?
Yeah, what's going on, everybody? Glad to be back. Missed a week last week. Busy schedules once again. It's hard out here being old and trying to do fantasy podcasts, especially with two of us trying to coordinate times together. But always glad to be back on the podcast, bringing you back with the realest content you got in the fantasy football world, at least in our humble opinion. But today, we already went through our receivers for the 2022 class. Now we're going to move over to Steven's bread and butter, and we're going to do the running backs of the previous class.
This class, outside of the top two, three, a little spotty. But we're going to start it off with my favorite running back prospect in a long time, Mr. Iowa State himself, Breece Hall. Ryan, anything that you want to say about Breece Hall before we get started?
Yeah. Listen, me and Steve were huge Breece Hall guys going into the hype. I think it came to no surprise that he was the RB1 of last year's class. And I think he still stands out as the one, even with Ken Walker's success last year. He, despite the injury early on, he was absolutely dominant on the field. Featuring, just looking at the numbers right off the stats, I mean, yards per touch for every running back in the entire NFL, 6.9 yards per touch, led the entire league. And I get that's I get it's limited time. You know, he didn't play the whole season. Yeah, blah blah blah. But that was with Zach Wilson in this offense. Now we have Aaron Rodgers coming in, so I would imagine the opportunity is still going to be there for him. And on top of the yards per touch, he also had stacked boxes against him almost all game. Almost 7 in the box per play for Breece Hall, and he still had that much success. So I think with Aaron Rodgers in this offense, the opportunity for Breece Hall is sky high.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. There's only 3 games to really evaluate Breece Hall in this from a running standpoint. 3 games with 17 touches or more. And in that point, he had 1 game under 4 yards per carry. And that was against Pittsburgh. And we're dominant up front against the run, as you can tell. Both of those other games, 5.4 yards per carry, 5.89 yards per carry. The game after his ACL tear, he had 4 carries and he had 72 yards and a touchdown. There's no question. At that point, Breece Hall was top 5 in the league in explosive plays, 10-plus yards carries or more, 4 straight games with a touchdown. But the biggest thing you have to realize when it comes to Breece Hall is on top of the explosiveness in the backfield is the receiving profile. He's a monster. 3 games of 6 targets or more. 1 game he had 11 targets, 6 catches. He had a 100-yard game. He had a 100-yard game with 2 catches in the receiving game. He had 2 receiving touchdowns. He was averaging almost 11.5 yards per catch. Obviously, that's not a substantial number that can be withstained, but the receiving profile should stand out to everybody. On pace last year, Breece Hall was looking to push 1,500-plus total yards. It wasn't even close. He was the most explosive running back in the game last year. Coming off a clean ACL tear as well, you have to limit your expectations early. I don't think you'll see the Breece Hall of old until I'm going to say October. I'm going to give him a couple games to get ready to go. I don't see him playing in the preseason. I don't see him getting his feet wet there.
No.
But October on, let's ride.
Yeah. Well, that was the next thing I was going to get into is like the fact, this ACL tear, like what does it mean for this year? As an owner for the first 5, 6, maybe 7 weeks of the season, are you concerned about his production, or do you think he can still average around that 10-point mark, which is what I kind of shoot for fantasy players?
Need 10 points per game?
Yeah.
So last year, Breece Hall averaged a little over 16 per game. And like I said, that was limited. That was limited with 3 games of a true running back one workload.
Right.
The first 4 weeks, you could see a eased into limited work role for him. I could see him still averaging 12 points per game though. Every touch for Breece Hall is a productive touch.
Yeah.
He's just a productive, explosive runner. Like I said, give him 4 weeks, then evaluate, then go from there. Let him ease into it because, like I said, he's probably not going to play preseason football. Lower your expectations early, but expect the Breece Hall of last year moving forward after week 4 to week 6.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with it. I don't really have any injury concern. I'm certainly not selling him just based off injury. Not a thought in my head. So the injuries suck. You never want to see ACL tear, but nowadays, if it's a clean tear in Breece Hall's case, they kind of come back normally just fine. So we should be all right.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of his OTA work, and he's sprinting at full speed. He looks good. Limited cutting mobility right now. We're 7 months past the ACL tear and surgery, so it's usually a 9 month to a year recovery time.
Yeah.
Then you have to think about the strengthening and conditioning of the knee. But I'm no doctor, so I assume him to be ready to play week 1. Like I said, effectiveness will be that's the question.
Yeah.
But no matter what, do not sell him. He is a absolute beast. To me, I have him ranked as dynasty running back 2. I have him ahead of Taylor. I have him ahead of Taylor. Oh, excuse me. Ahead of Christian McCaffrey, Barkley, ETN, all those guys.
Gibbs. Can't forget, a lot of people will have Gibbs hype is real, but a lot of people are pushing them up to the 2, 3, 4 spots for dynasty running backs.
If you sell Breece Hall for Jahmyr Gibbs, and I like Gibbs, I'm a big Gibbs fan, you need to reevaluate some things.
Right. Yeah.
Breece Hall, I know Bijan coming in is probably one of the greatest running back prospects we've seen come out of college since Saquon Barkley. But I have Breece Hall in that same conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe not as good as Saquon, but that's no need to worry about the back and forth.
It's no need. I'm just saying Breece Hall is that kind of talent. Breece Hall is that kind of talent.
Well, you mentioned selling, which kind of like leads us into a good spot for the RB2 of last year's class. A lot of people are down on him because of the addition of Zach Charbonnet. Ken Walker, do you have any concerns with Charbonnet coming into that backfield, or do you think it's just going to be like a 60-40 situation, considering they didn't really have RB2 last year?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have it as a 60-40 situation at all. I'm going to be honest with you. I have it more of an 80-20 off the rip. Charbonnet is a running back that I was not very high on coming pre-draft. You know that. We've had extensive talks about Zach Charbonnet. Never really liked his running style. Yeah, does he project as a better receiver than Ken Walker? Probably. But I'll be honest with you.
That's not saying much.
Yeah, when I watched the full 17-game slate, I was actually impressed with his pass blocking ability, even though that was a concern for me coming into the season last year. He showed me a lot there. The only concern that I have with Ken Walker was his ability to convert in the red zone and to convert at the goal line. He only converted one rush on the goal line, and he had 12 opportunities last year. One was a touchdown. That is concerning.
Yeah.
That's the only concerning part I have about the profile. Clear explosive runner. Ken Walker is better than Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah.
I will say, though, at times Ken Walker did get tackled for losses when he shouldn't have. So, like I said, but that's about it. Overall, this is Ken Walker's backfield. This is Zach Charbonnet has to show me that he can earn touches behind Ken Walker.
Right. So here's what I say about Ken Walker. I think he's just another pure running back. I'm not going to say he's on the same level as like a Derrick Henry or a Nick Chubb or anything like that, but he's definitely J.K. Dobbins. Like a pure runner, not really going to get a lot of reception work out of the backfield, but efficient runners. like you already kind of said, yeah, he's had some times where I feel like I'm watching some of this tape and I feel like he could have maybe gotten a little bit more. Um, but it's just rookie year. I really loved him in Michigan State, to be honest with you. He slipped right into the 2 spot, obviously, behind Brees Hall for me in the rankings last year. It's the whole thing is just I don't understand the whole, and it goes for ETN too, with all this hype that Charbonnet and Tank Bigsby are getting, like almost taking over these backfields in like recent situations. But when you look at it, neither the Seahawks nor the Jags really had an RB2 in that room to really help cushion the blow of these running backs. I mean, say what you want, but we are moving more towards a committee backfield situation. You don't want your dynasty RB1 getting gassed out like a Todd Gurley situation. So I'm not with either of those 2 ads. I'm not worried about it. I think people get a little bit bored with this long off season. And yeah, Ken Walker, no issues with him at all.
Yeah, I mean, you got to also remember too, you have to have some negative with some positive. We're also not talking about Ken Walker's explosive ability as well. He was also top 7 in the league in explosive rush rate.
Yeah.
Top 7 in the league in explosive plays, 10 plus yards or more. 500-yard games last year, and he didn't take over for Rashad Penny until week 5. 5 straight games with a rushing touchdown. 3 games with 2 rushing touchdowns or more. You could see some receiving work. It's not great, but he did have an outlier game where he had 8 targets for 6 receptions. He's capability of catching the ball out of the backfield. It's capable. It's not great, but at the end of the day, you know who this backfield belongs to.
Yeah.
I'm a Ken Walker dynasty owner. I'm not selling. I'm not selling cheap.
Right.
Not panicking over anything. I mean, we can also talk about his coach Pete Carroll. He had the same backfield situation when they drafted Rashad Penny in the first round. Chris Carson won the job. It was Chris Carson's job for 5 years before Chris Carson had a gruesome neck injury. Rashad Penny never got playing time. So, I mean, take it for what it is. History tends to repeat itself with coaches.
Yeah.
The significant draft capital does scare me a little bit. Obviously, Rashard Penny picked 52, but it's not enough to anywhere panic. So my level of worry is probably a 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10.
Yeah, no, and just I was going through some of his advanced stats here. I think just something to point out here for all those people that say he's struggling, this, that, another thing. He was stuffed in the backfield on almost 24% of his runs last year. And like you said before, still averaged a good yard per touch season. So that kind of speaks volumes to me. Give him a little bit of space with the offensive line. And I think he'll be just fine.
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember, too, it does concern you a little bit because the offensive line in Seattle did create 3+ yards of positive yardage off the line of scrimmage for every run play. So to get stuffed in the backfield 24% of the time, I mean, is a little worrisome at some points. But It's not enough to make me think that Pete Carroll's giving up on Ken Walker.
I don't think so.
And when I'm talking about dynasty value, I probably have him running back 6. I did move him down a little bit, I won't lie, because he was as high as 3 or 4 for me. I have him at running back 6. I have him in the Josh Jacobs range.
Josh Jacobs, that feels, yeah.
Yeah, I personally have it Bijan, Brees, JT, CMC, Barkley, then ETN, and then like Jacobs, Ken Walker. That's where I have it right there.
Right.
So don't be worried, ladies and gentlemen. Ken Walker's your guy.
I don't know.
I mean, am I wrong?
Yeah, I like Ken Walker. He'll be fine. They really created 3 yards of separations for the running backs in every game, and he still got stuffed that much. I thought that would be a good thing for him, but if they're creating that much space, man, that's a little. That's a little rough. So what does that mean? At the end of the day, he's just kind of hesitating in the backfield, trying to find that hole.
He's a very patient runner. He's very patient. He plays a very patient style.
Scary.
At times it works for you. At times it doesn't. But you gotta remember too, man. Like his one jump cut ability and his explosive take it to the house play style is insane.
Yeah.
That's something that Zach Charbonnet, however you want to say it, does not have. Like I said, his quirky run style. I've never been a fan of Zach. So anybody that says they are a fan, then it is what it is. But I'm not.
Yeah, Zach. His run style reminds me a lot of Isaiah Spiller from last year, or from 2 years ago. 2 years ago, where I really wasn't in love with it. Like, yeah, the runs look good on tape, but you look at the feet, a little wonky. That's not something that's ever really going to translate to the league. You kind of see the same thing in Charbonnet from last year at UCLA. I'm not saying it's anywhere nearly as bad as Spiller was, but that's just something to look out for, man. You don't want to see these running backs running clunky. If you don't know what that means, it's kind of just like they're moving quickly, but their feet seem like they're moving through quick sand, if that makes any sense at all.
They lag behind their body.
Yeah.
Yeah, like his one cut ability, his ability to stop, his ability to accelerate. It doesn't stand out to me. His tape never stood out to me. He was a guy that I had lower than consensus the whole time. Before I found out about Sean Tucker's heart injury or heart issue, I had him at 3. I had Charbonnet at 4. I had Charbonnet at 5 behind Kendre Miller. Was never a fan, so I'm not going to be worried about a guy that I'm not worried about. You know what I mean? That I never liked anyway.
Yeah.
Last running back we're going to get into tonight. A running back I just sold in Dynasty, actually, believe it or not. James Cook. I'm going to be honest with you. I made this trade, and I don't know what to think of James Cook at all. Like, to me, traditionally, he doesn't stand out as a guy that can take on a three down workhorse role. He doesn't at all.
Right.
But you come in and you look at the limited, very limited. Trust me, I understand. Very limited. Had 91 carries last year, 525 yards, 5.7 yards per carry. He is one of the highest tackles. He is one of the highest tackles forced miss rate. He misses tackles. He's very good. He's very elusive.
Right.
He profiles as an elite receiving back. But then you think about this. You lose Devin Singletary, and then you bring in Damian Harris, who I think is a better in between the tackles runner, who is a tougher runner. And you still have Nyheim Hines on the roster. You then have to compete with Josh Allen when it comes to touch and in the red zone. So what is James Cook? James Cook has never had a game over 14 touches in his career, and that goes back to Georgia. What am I missing something?
So here's what I say about James Cook. Well, one, they get rid of Devin Singletary, and for a single day, we thought maybe, hey, this is the chance he has. They immediately signed, within like 4 hours, I believe?
Yeah, it was like a 3-hour window.
Went out and signed Damian Harris. So clearly they don't really believe in him as a true three down horseback. What worries with me is the 5.77 yards per carry looks really good on paper. But my thing is he a change of pace running back in the league, or is he going to be somebody that can come in and grind out yards for you? I think even with the receiving, man, like it really has to improve. Nyheim Hines is a great pass catcher out of the backfield. So I don't love that. Will he be involved in this Buffalo Bills offense? Undoubtedly. But I think it's one of the situations where he's going to be a better real-life football player than he is on your fantasy teams. So I don't really see him more than like a change of pace back, like get in there, fresh legs, churn some yards out, get the job done. I don't really see him ever touching anywhere near 20 yards per game, maybe even 15 carries per game. So it's tough to gauge James Cook. And what thoughts? Do you think he ever touches the rock 15 times out of the backfield this year?
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say history and data isn't in his favor.
Right. He didn't touch the rock more than 15 times period last year. I mean, it's his rookie season, so maybe they're trying to ease him in.
He's never
But
had 15 carries
yeah,
ever.
yeah.
Go back to
So
Georgia, bro. He has like 157 career carries in Georgia in 2 years.
right.
No, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. Like I said, like I love the talent, and obviously, like if he were Dalvin's weight, if he was pushing 210, 215, sure. I think he's just as talented in Dalvin. He's just a mighty version of Dalvin. That's just what he is.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't know how to gauge him, because you have some people that are thinking James Cook, low end RB1, high end RB2 season, but then you have guys that are thinking that he's a flex at best. There's a wide range of outcomes with James Cook.
That's me.
And
It
James
kind of
Cook
leans
just
more towards the like flex spot side for me. Because look, I know I just gave a whole spiel on how you shouldn't be worried about Bigsby and Charbonnet, but look, you bring in Damian Harris, who's already done it. He's already had a season with 15 touchdowns when he was with the Patriots. I kind of see the Bills using him a lot in the same way. I'm not saying he's going to get 15, but he is going to eat away at those touchdowns for James Cook.
Bro, but then, like you said, then you're competing with Josh Allen.
Right,
when is
on
he
top
ever
of
gonna,
yeah.
When is he ever going to get the ball in significant touch situations?
Yeah. When it comes down to is he is electric with the ball in his hands out of the backfield. But the thing is, it's going to have to take him getting the ball 4, 5, 6 times a game for him to be any type of productive. And I don't think that with Nyheim Hines there, Josh Allen doesn't really check the ball down much in the first place. So it's tough to get to those numbers. I'm a little bit worried about James Cook. But at the same time, that 5.77 yards per carry does look juicy.
Right. And he is one of the highest in the league when it comes to elusiveness rate, forced tackles missed, and things like that. Like, I get it. It stands out. But who is he? That's what I have to answer. And I will tell you the trade, me personally. You know how big I am on George Pickens. I gave up James Cook in a 2025 second, meaning I already had one as well in a prior trade in the startup that we just did for George Pickens. I'm a huge George Pickens fan, firm believer that George Pickens is going to be talked about in the low-end wide receiver 1 territory at the end of the 2023 season. Go get your guy. And the guy I traded with, he believes in James Cook. There are James Cook believers. And if you got your guy, you got your guy. I have no issues with the trade. To me, like I told you, I just don't know who James Cook is.
Yeah. That's scary. I think he's the only one of these 3 that you never really saw carve out an actual role. And I think that leads to a lot of uncertainties with James Cook. Right. So, like I said, we'll see how it pans out this year for him, but I don't see a particularly productive fantasy profile for him. As far as the running back for the Bills, I think he'll be just fine. I think it'll be a good change of pace back, and he'll be good for 3-4 catches out of the backfield each game if he can nut that. But as far as fantasy goes, that's really not going to do much for you.
So what is James Cook's dynasty value going for? That's the question.
Let me pull out this fancy dancy little. Give me 1 second. I don't know what I would. I mean, I think you did do a good job getting Pickens for James Cook. I just don't love that you so willingly give up future picks with such ease. But for just like trade wire trades, I've seen him. I mean, trade for. I mean, Jesus, Lord have mercy. I mean, he's not really going for a whole lot, honestly.
Well, before the Damian Harris signing, people were pushing back in first to you for him in 2023. You're not getting that no more.
No.
And the thing is, it's like, as a player, the underlying metrics look good. So, like, would you let him go for a second round pick? what wide receiver are you letting him go for? Are you taking him or are you taking Mike Evans?
You don't want that answer because
I'm just saying.
I'll take 2 more productive guaranteed seasons out of Mike Evans before I take on James Cook,
Right,
who's a
that's
little
what I'm
bit
saying.
scary.
Like, would you take guys like Mike Evans, Mike Williams, Juju, Tyler Lockett, guys like that over
I think I
James
draw
Cook?
the line. I think I draw the line with Juju. Man, I, I've never been sold on Juju ever since his Steeler days. I think he had his best season with AB, and then that's going to be the best.
I mean,
Um,
I'm fair
yeah,
enough. I'm just saying, but you know what I mean, though. Like, what? He's so hard to gauge.
yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Going through recent trades submitted. The best trade I saw was him getting. It was James Cook in a second for Trey Lance. Was probably the most that anybody's gotten out of him out of the last 3 months. So the
James
market's
Cook, James Cook,
yeah
in a second for Trey Lance.
in the second for Trey Lance was the trade.
Nah, give me Trey Lance, bro.
Yeah, give me Trey Lance. I'm on the same boat. As much as Trey Lance brings questions, I think James Cook brings just as many. So say what you want. Out of the 3, he's the one I worry about the most by far. And obviously Brees Hall being the best of the bunch. Honestly, for me, I think there's a massive gap between Brees Hall and Ken Walker. But that's just me. That's just because Brees Hall offers the receiving value and the rushing ability more so than Ken Walker does.
So the way the running back landscape has played out, I had James Cook at running back 29 in my rankings. How do you gauge that? I mean, I know running backs, are more my thing than you per se, but you hear running back 29. Do you hear that's about right for James Cook? A little low, a little high?
I mean, it feels a little low, I'll say. But I mean, it comes down to it when you're down there in that low 20s area. I mean, it's like, are you taking Rashad White or Isaiah Pacheco both over James Cook? Because that's kind of
Yep.
where I have them in that same region in my rankings.
Yeah, I'll tell you Pacheco. No
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. So now I think that's fair ratings, and then
So I have just a couple running backs just to end this conversation that are around the same area as James Cook. Cam Akers.
I like Cam.
Me
But
too.
listen, I've been preaching for the last 3 years, even after the injury, that Cam Akers is going to be the guy in the Rams backfield. So maybe I'm not the correct person to ask Cam Akers or James Cook, but I like Cam Akers.
I think this one's a pretty easy one for me as well. I might have to change my rankings here due to the no competition, but Dameon Pierce.
I don't know. Between the two, I mean, I guess give me Pierce. But I mean, you'll get the same guy that was just hindering James Cook is now in the same backfield as Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary. So we'll see what happens.
I don't really,
but sadly, still give me Dameon Pierce.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk a whole lot about Dameon Pierce since he'll be next up on our conversations. Yeah. But last one I'm going to offer to you, Kendre Miller.
Now we're getting dicey because you're looking at like unknown versus like, okay, we've seen him be somewhat successful with his touches. I think Kendre is going to get a chance to play quickly. I mean, especially if Kamara gets suspended, it's going to be Jamal Williams and Kendre. And I do think rookie year for Kendre is going to look a little bleak considering you have the previous leader in rushing touchdowns on that same offense. But going forward, honestly, give me fucking Kendre over James Cook, and that might be a little bit of hearsay, maybe a little bit of a hot take, but I'm just not sold on James Cook, man.
I have it ranked the same way. Don't worry. And my last one, and I'm done asking you about it. David Montgomery.
That's probably the worst one yet. I mean, I like David Montgomery.
All right, so we're in the same boat.
God, man, that's putting James Cook.
Like I said, I have him consensusly ranked at running back 29. And that was hard for me to do. Like I said, I like the peripherals, but I didn't think James Cook was going to be the most talked about tonight. I thought we were going to give love more to Brees and Ken Walker, but you know what I mean? It was crazy that James Cook was the one that sparked these conversations.
I mean, it's always easier to talk about the more controversial guys than it is to talk about like what's kind of already known in the dynasty community. We get into like our actual takes on James Cook, and like we get to tell the public, hey, like maybe pull back a little bit on James Cook, go sell him if you can, just like you did for George Pickens.
Yeah, and like I said, the guy I traded with, he got his guy. Obviously, he's a big James Cook believer. I'm a big George Pickens believer, so I wanted to go make sure I got my wide receiver that I wanted. I also am now on the phase of I have to realize that the running back position is not what it was, 5 to 10 years ago. What made me fall in love with running backs. So with that being said, I've gone to a more wide receiver heavy approach. So that's what we're going to keep going with.
It's about damn time. That's
Well,
I guess 2-3 years late is better late than never.
But I mean, you still got some running back beasts in the community. So if you own them, be happy to own them. But other than that, man, that's all we got for the night. Before we get out of here, you want to say your spiel to the people?
Yeah, we're gonna try our best to work schedules out where we can get another podcast in by the end of the week, just to knock out the rest of these 2022 running backs. But yeah, glad that you guys are listening. Glad to be here. Glad to put our content out there on the air for you guys. Like I've always said since the beginning of these podcasts, man, you guys are like the absolute floor for us. So glad that we have a clear base of who we have behind us. And look, we're just looking to grow. I feel like every month, every podcast, we get a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And it's good to have the little support that we do just to keep us moving up and up and up. And glad to be here. Yeah, thanks for listening and tuning in.
Yeah, I do want to say one thing. The overall growth of our podcast and our social media platforms has been phenomenal. Whether that be the success of us or the working with RPO football, we appreciate you guys over there for what you guys do. We appreciate the platform. We love talking football. This is why we're here. We just want to get better. That's all it is. We just want to grow in this community. We want the information that we have to be known to the world, to be known to the public. So we appreciate you guys that tune in. We appreciate you guys that watch and listen every podcast and every time we go live. You are the reason we do this. And on that note, we just want to say thank you, and we're out.